Hello, BNVU, and welcome to the That Guy's a Maniac, the podcast. The podcast that gives you the unenviable... Right, fuck you. Yeah, fuck.
That's what you decided to go with, a European introduction. Okay, fine.
Okay, you done? You ready?
Well, you built it up. I was hoping for more, but
okay.
Fine.
Well, I'm not even fucking... You interrupted me after the first sentence.
Well,
right, okay.
Maybe you didn't know.
Shut up. Just shut up. Let me finish it. Let me fucking finish it.
Okay.
Right. The podcast that gives you the unenviable insight into the creators and masterminds behind the second best video games website ever, www.thatguys.co.uk. Masterminds, yeah. In this podcast series, we discuss the video games near and dear to us and give you, the listener, the rare privilege of hearing our poorly researched verbal dump. We are your hosts, Richie and Farley, aka Kunzi11. Say hello, Farley.
Hiya.
And tell us, Farley, where else can we be found? I fucking hate you. That was solid. That was solid, man. You just genuinely put me off.
I'm sorry, I didn't. It was a weak start, but it was really solid after that, and I know I ruined it. That would teach me. You can find us all over the internet, really. That Guy's a Maniac on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. That's it. You can also go directly to the blog, www.thatguys.co.uk. We actually had a non-podcast blog this quarter, so you might want to read that.
Yeah. In the past 3 months, we've done something that isn't actually about the podcast. Yeah.
Despite the hard rule that we set ourselves that we wouldn't just have podcast episode after podcast episode.
Right. And do we have a sponsor for today, Farley?
We do, of course. We couldn't bring this this masterminded content without support from our generous sponsors. And this week we're sponsored by Eurocorp for all your ambiguous, big, evil cyber enhancement corporation needs. Eurocorp. Thanks, Eurocorp.
Yeah, thanks, Eurocorp. Without you, we couldn't do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, bringing it back to podcast number 1.
Get them all out your system.
Right, cool.
Okay.
Today, we're going to discuss Amiga games. Yeah?
I'm excited.
You're excited? How excited?
And this is timely. 7 out of 10 excited.
Okay.
Because in the timeline we're recording this in, High Score has just come out on Netflix. Have you watched that? Started watching that?
I have no idea what it is. Tell me about it.
Okay. So it's a history of video games series, and we've seen a number of these in the past, but it's quite a good one, and quite a few of my friends, some of whom play video games, some of whom aren't, are watching it. And it's quite well produced, and it's not just the usual usual beats of history. We've got there's some cool interviews with people and objects and items. However, I think we're only up to episode 2 or 3. It is the Japanese and American history of video games. Maybe there's an episode coming up which kind of looks at what's happening in the UK or elsewhere. But that's always been one of the things I've been a little bit kind of not disappointed with, but in any history of video games where it talks about, arcades and then Atari and then Nintendo, because that wasn't really my history in video games. I don't think many people in the UK during the 80s, late 80s and 90s, it was theirs either. Instead, as we've mentioned a number of times, we didn't really have arcades here. We didn't really have video game shops until really, really late. And so my formative years of playing video games on a TV, should we say, comes from the Amiga. Like, I'd like to say maybe 10% of the games we had were legit games that we bought from the store. 90% was this, ripped floppy disk games that were being circulated around the network of dads and mums at the time.
Yeah, I was thinking about that and whether or not to talk about that, but I remember like the copy protection on floppy disks was it was like a little tiny little notch on the side, and in order for you to get around that copy protection, you just put like a little piece of sticky tape over the corner of it, and you could record it. You know.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when we did buy a few, there was one. It was more a computer shop than a game shop in the city that I grew up in, and it's one of those ones where you walk in and it looks like some kind of emergency relief type. There's no decoration, very little furniture. Instead, it would be like the kind of chipboard with the holes in, and then just loads of shit in plastic bags, like joysticks in plastic bags, discs and manuals in plastic bags. So that's kind of where we got some of the games, but then the rest, we just get armfuls of ripped games from each other and then kind of trade them around. So it was kind of cool because essentially just going in blind. Like, all you had was a handwritten name of a game on the front, if you're lucky, and then you put it in, and then you say, "What am I in for?" Yeah.
That being said, I used to love the boxes Amiga games came in. Massively oversized, great big sort of A4 boxes that you would get for no good reason, because it just it just had like a couple of discs, and I did decorate my teenage room by sort of pinning those boxes onto the wall, so that I had like a New Zealand story box and all that sort of stuff, just on the wall for the games I was playing. But yeah, it's weird that there was that concept of like, let's put something in an oversized box. I mean, technically, I suppose you do it nowadays with even sort of like Switch games. There's no need for the amount of packaging that tiny little cartridge has.
Yeah, but then not with all games, but a lot of games just came with these lush manuals and posters and stickers. So I remember, for some reason, I had no idea, we bought Team Yankee, which is a tank sim, which was quite good, but so complicated that when we first got it, I didn't really understand. But then much later, it was a game that you could really get your teeth into. So it comes in this, like you're saying, this huge A4 box, which is 10 centimeters high as well. But then it had this spiral-bound manual, like really high production quality, with all the different information about the different tanks and the different weapons. Then there was a fold-out map of the areas. I think it also came with some kind of sticker as well. You'd also get things like trading cards in them, so there was other stuff that came in these open.
Yeah, I suppose now you're kind of justifying it. There's also one other thing that always came in those boxes. Well, towards the sort of middle of the Amiga's life cycle, and that was the piracy protection tool, or whatever it was going to be. Do you remember these? So it'd be like, enter the code from manual page 352, because obviously like they would produce these great big manuals and they put the copy protection in there just so you could get past it. And what was the other thing? I think Another World. They had a really cool one, which was like a wheel.
Yes. And
you had to like spin it, and you had to choose the right ones in order to actually get into the game as well.
Yeah, I think FA-18 Interceptor came with one of those discs.
Yeah.
And you'd have to spin round. There's like a window in these concentric discs which you put the code in. So yeah, perhaps why some of the games came with those big boxes.
Yep. Cool. So, what Amiga did you have?
Do you know what? I have no idea. To this day, I have no idea.
Oh, man. Well, I had an Amiga 1200, which I was very, very chuffed about. And I remember the lead up to me actually getting it, because previously I'd had a Commodore 64. And actually, in the back of one of these Commodore 64 magazines, there was like these page ads of like computers and games that would be for sale. And I actually had a little Google just to try and find what that company was, who they were, and like maybe even try and find the actual product that I did have. And I found it. Yeah. And I actually found the A4 scan of the page from the magazine that I actually bought it from. There's a company called Silica Computer and Games. And when I read it, I was like, Silica, yeah. And it was just like a big nostalgia hit. And basically they had these page spreads with deals on different versions, and I could see them. They were really, really bigging up the 1200 because it was the Amiga with AGA graphics. To this day, no idea what AGA means, but apparently it's better than the Amiga 600. And I was hoping you were going to say Amiga 600 so I could boast and brag, but yeah.
No, I'm just inspired by what you were saying. I'm just looking. I don't think we had an Amiga 500. It had like a weird giant thing that you plugged into the side.
A giant thing? What do you mean?
So it looked like, you know, your standard Amiga kind of keyboard, and then that weird little power pack and the clicky mouse. But then there was a chunky thing, like an oversized dongle that you'd put in the side.
I've no concept of what you're. Oh, and wait a minute. The hard drive.
Commodore.
It was the hard drive that you plugged into the side of it.
Maybe.
Yes. Yeah. Look up Amiga 500 hard drive. This is really interesting for everyone at home.
Absolutely something we could not have done before.
Yeah.
Was it the hard drive?
It's a great big chunky thing. It sits
on the side. Who knows? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, because that was the way to do all of the super hacking, and keep like hooky copies of the games and stuff like that. But I just like redid everything on floppy. Not that I ever did any illegal piracy or anything like
that. just in case.
But yeah, I actually ended up.
Bitmap brothers are going to come after you for piracy.
But yeah, I actually found the bundle that I bought as well, which was, well, I didn't buy it. Obviously, I was I was quite young, so Mother Dearest bought it for me. But yeah, it was the Race and Chase pack, and it was called the Race and Chase pack because it had Nigel Mansell's Formula 1 racing and Trolls, the platform game. So I'm guessing Race was the Formula 1 thing and Chase was Trolls platforming. But along with that, they kept on pimping these big packs of games, software bundles and things like that, which were basically, they used to pimp it as like £800 worth of, coding and all this sort of stuff, and you're like, all right, okay, and I think you get it for like 50 quid if you buy, an Amiga from them, and it included stuff like I remember it was like a paint tool called Photon Paint, and there was a thing called GFA Basic, which allowed you to do basic programming. Great. And a whole bunch of other games, because it included things like Pinball Dreams, Zool, Syndicate, and Elite 2 Frontier as well. So it was all this sort of big bundle of games and tools, which you just got free, as they said, with your Amiga 1200 when you bought it. But yeah.
Just whilst you were rambling on and I wasn't listening, I was listening. And I'd be interested to talk to you about Elite as well, if you played it. I just found the bundle that we got. So we did have an Amiga 500, and we got the Batman pack.
Yeah, that was a popular one, I remember. Yeah.
Which came in this big box, which for some reason everything was carved into stone, and it came with Batman, which is rubbish, New Zealand Story, FA-18 Interceptor, and Deluxe Paint 2. That was the pack we got.
Deluxe Paint, yeah.
I spent hours on Deluxe Paint. Anyway.
Wow. Cool. That's awesome. Right, so you had an Amiga 500 and I had an Amiga 1200, thus proving I do have a bigger willy than you. So,
Well, I don't know. I mean, you've Johnny come lately if you were getting Amiga 1200 now.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
I was doing on the ground with when it was, just working with independent filmmakers such as Batman.
Ocean Games, yeah. They used to do all of the movie tie-ins. Like Ocean used to get like RoboCop and Nightbreed.
Oh
and,
god, yeah, we had all of those as well. all not very good.
They were the same game over and over and over.
Hence, they weren't very good. And I remember. So, Batman's not on my list, so we'll talk about it now. It was hilarious because he couldn't fall too far, or he died, which isn't a very Batman thing. So there was some jumps. He had this really awkward grapple hook that you could kind of only fire off diagonally, which is an absolute pain in the ass with a joystick to get. And so if you didn't actually get the grapple hook and just walked off the edge, you'd fall, centimeters. Wouldn't even roll the screen, and he'd die. But instead of falling over and dying, he'd just kind of land and then hunch up in a ball.
Yeah. Wow, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
but it's weird.
That Batman game that you're talking about is based on the Jack Nicholson movie, Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson one, and I think that's actually like a highly regarded game for I think the SNES or the Mega Drive, and it's just like, this is like really, really good early platformer, but I'm guessing the Amiga version of it wasn't very good.
I think it was doing diagonals with a joystick just wasn't.
No. I mean that's oh dear. It doesn't at all. No, I remember that quite frequently with pretty much all platforms, even on the Commodore 64. Just, I don't know. It took me a while when I sort of first started playing what's it called? Like a Master System or something like that, and actually having a button to jump.
Yeah.
I thought, why is there a button to jump when you've clearly got an up button? And now you just never look back. That is the way it should have always been, as a button to jump.
And I just really fondly remember that that motion of, okay, I've got a jump coming up, and just like yank the joystick up into the top right hand corner,
and instead you would just like jump upwards, or you would just fall off the ledge.
You'd run.
Oh dear.
And so we just I don't know if it's the same with you, but you'd have those joysticks. They'd have suckers on the bottom.
Yeah.
You detach the desk, and we just went through dozens of them. They were just so crap, I think. Well, obviously we played a lot as well, but yeah, it was.
I had quite a few joysticks like that, but I also actually had I think it was the Mega Drive control pad, which actually fit into the Amiga port, and you could use Mega Drive control pads for things as well. But because it was stupid, you still had to press up to jump as well, and that just doesn't work on a joypad. But yeah, no, I remember having. In fact, I went to a very similar store like the one that you were describing, which has everything in plastic bags, and in fact, it was the Barras, which was in the 90s a marketplace in Glasgow, which basically just sold hooky everything. You know, it would have a stall. You know, it'd have a legit stall where, like, there was, like, a butcher who was selling meat, and then beside it, there'd be a guy, you know, serving you know, Golden Virginia in massive big boxes that he clearly bought from, you know, Poland or something like that. And then you would have, like, places that just sold balaclavas. You know, because
and then next door would be the crowbar man.
Exactly.
And then next door to that would be the swag bag man.
But yeah, there was loads of computer shops at the Barras, and basically they were office clearance places. So you would go there and you would buy like an old Windows 3.1 PC for 50 quid, which, you know, they'd all got from an office that had been shut down. Yeah. But also right beside them, you would have the pirating place, which who would, like, in later years actually made CDs. Like, before we had CD read RWs. Yeah. There used to be like these places that would make CDs, and you could go in and say, I want this game, that game, this game from big catalogue. And then they would put it on the CD for you, and you go back with a sort of gold pressed CD. With all of these illegal games on them. Not that I know anything about this, but yeah. But they also sold peripherals, and one of the ones that I got was this giant, massive, what's it called, joystick, and it was ridiculous. I don't think I could even probably find it on the net anymore, but it had this. The joystick came out the side of it. It was kind of like, I think, supposed to be for like flight sims or something like that. Or nowadays you would use it on flight sims, but obviously it had like two buttons, you know, your trigger button and the other button, and that was it. But it was just massively oversized. And I used to use that to play video games with, and of course this great big hefty clumpy bastard does not make diagonal jumping any easier in any fashion whatsoever. Right. Do we have any other memories to get nostalgic about, or shall we jump?
Wander down nostalgia lane. No, I think I got everything I want to get out.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing, just to very, very quickly touch on, is, do you remember that you used to have to, for some games, load into Amiga Workbench before you could actually load the games?
Yes.
Fucking Workbench. There's still people out there to this day who use that operating system and are updating it and are trying to make it for the PC.
Yes, when I was doing some research on the games we had and the stuff we had, you know.
Wait. Sorry, hold the fucking phone. You tell me you're doing research for our podcast?
I did 2 minutes before we came.
All right, okay.
I did a little bit.
That's allowed. Okay.
But yeah, you know, there are people who are keeping these things going. There's obviously a huge emulation scene, but I think there are people who actually kind of work on the hardware as well. So if you want that legit Amiga 500 experience, but kind of keeping the hardware going, and I think I saw somebody like selling new inverted comma Amigas. So
wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's actually move on to and talk about the games. So we went away and we decided to bring 3 of our favourites. Now, I don't know what 3 you've chosen, you don't know what 3 I've chosen, and this could be great, as in we may have played each other's games or not. So we'll just see how it works out. So Farley, tell me, what's your first game that you remember so dearly from the Amiga?
So we've already mentioned it twice. It came with the Batman pack bundle, and we played the shit out of it. And that is New Zealand Story, Ocean's New Zealand Story.
Okay, so I have played that one, but
yeah,
on the Commodore 64, not on the Amiga. Johnny late to the party.
You're playing it decades after the underground kid. The cool kids were playing on the Commodore, and it was solid. Oh God, here we go. Here's our rich vocabulary.
Was it sassy? Was it like all female characters in games? Was it sassy?
It was interesting. It was sassy. It was solid, and it was phenomenal. It was really well done. No, but it was a solid, because some of we talked about how you trade these games, and there were just so many games flying around. You had no idea the kind of quality or whether they were, published releases by coders or just something that somebody put together in their bedroom. So there was a lot of shit out there and stuff that just didn't really work. A lot of games are really fucking hard as well. So Batman, as you mentioned, was solid. RoboCop was solid. Nightbreed was solid. Of course, this is like a, Shadow of the Beast.
Of course. I mean, Another World is a perfect example of ridiculously hard games at that time. Yeah. So you kind
of, if it was a bootleg and you didn't have the manual, so you didn't really know what the controls were either, that didn't help. Whereas New Zealand's Story was fairly straightforward. It had many levels to it. So I can't remember how many there was, but every time you killed X many number of enemies, they would drop an upgrade to your weapon system. So you'd start off with a little bow and arrow. You'd go through, I think the second one was bombs, then you ended up with, and then there's a weapon that we just called the cabbage thrower, because it would throw around like a green fuzzy ball that would bounce around the screen. And then you'd upgrade. When you upgraded that, you upgraded to the laser, which was the best.
Yeah, I remember the laser. It was it looked like the sort of the NES light gun, and it just fired this sort of white bolt. Yeah.
Yeah, and it would cut through the scenery, so you could shoot enemies through the scenery, which was cool. The music was great. I've downloaded and still have the New Zealand Story soundtrack.
Was it great, or was it phenomenal, or was it sassy, or?
It was actually phenomenal, technically phenomenal on the Kanji 1-1 video game music assessment scale. The enemy design was really interesting, and you had just a really cool array of different enemy types. One of which was a whole array of enemies which would float on balloons, which you could steal.
And if you could shoot them off the balloons, you could then use the balloons.
Yeah, and then just fly out through the level. And there was like a evil cat, and then of course there was a time devil.
A time devil.
Yeah, and it was in
devil.
I'm sure it was in other Ocean games, actually. So if you were taking too long, the time devil would come and start flying around, and then basically just get you, so you could just hang around. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds very familiar.
Is Bubble Bobble? Did that have a time devil?
No. What Bubble Bobble did was, if you kind of. Basically, there was the enrage that you could get when you only had one enemy left in Bubble Bobble. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But basically, every enemy would enrage. But I don't know if there was a timer in Bubble Bobble. In fact, I'm pretty sure there wasn't. You could spend forever on one what's it called? One level. Over and over. In fact, I know exactly what level I spent forever doing. It was the one where you had to blow bubbles on the side and jump up, because all the enemies were up at the top on this tiny little ledge. But I think they just enrage every so often. I don't think there's a timer. but I might be wrong. Maybe the arcade version has one or something.
So yeah, so the Time Devil just looks like a little devil, horns, wings, pitchfork, carrying a clock. There are also secret windmills, we used to call them, which would take you to different levels.
Oh,
and then
okay.
At the end of each level, which was based around a real area of New Zealand, so like Auckland, Waitomo Caves, Mount Cook. Naively, kind of didn't because we were young at the time, didn't put together that New Zealand story was actually set in New Zealand, and it was actually New Zealand. And the main character is a Kiwi.
Yeah.
And the boss is really cool. So there will be a whale that swallowed you. There was like a creepy baby that would open its belly and fire missiles at you.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not convinced we ever completed it.
I mean, I played it on the Commodore 64, so all my memories are all.
You beat it first time, okay.
Oh no, fuck off. I actually only ever got to the whale boss. Yeah. So the only reason I remember and know that is on the Commodore 64, it was one of these ones where you had to load the tape, and then it would load the boss. So in between each level, you had to press play on the tape. And I remember waiting what was probably a longer time, and I got to the whale boss, but it had been glitched. So it was all just sort of messed up characters rather than the actual whale that was floating about, but it was whale shaped. And yeah, like it was only many years later that I looked into this and like, oh right, okay, it was meant to actually be a whale, because I just kind of the glitch whale was always what I thought it was supposed to be. And basically I didn't win, and the idea of having to play through the entire game again while having to do that whole loading shit on the fucking Commodore 64 did not appeal, so that didn't really happen. But yeah, no, my memories of New Zealand Story are very pixel versions of all of the enemies you remember quite well. Yeah, and like Cabbage Thrower, yeah, that definitely resonated with me. I know I know exactly what you're talking about there.
Cabbage Thrower, the secret windmills, and then enemies would spawn from like these mirror portals.
Yes. No. I mean, I don't know.
Open up and they'd all come out. Yeah. And of course, you had the extend system.
Oh, is that like you collect the letters for extend or something? And what was the extend system?
So the various letters spread around the level, and if you collected them to spell extend, I don't really know what happened. Did you get another life?
Probably gave you an extra life, yeah, something rubbish. The way you've sold that as the extend system, you know, nowadays, if you were selling a game and you're saying now including the extend system, you know, it would be some sort of really crazy meta mechanic that you did on top of the FPS, and depending on the certain skills that you'd taken in your tree would, you know, fire off limit breaks or some sort of shit like that. But the extend system is just collect all of these and you get an extra life, like the Yoshi coins in the fucking Mario world.
Well, anyway, the reason I said it's the extend system is because there are a number of games which had it, right?
Yeah.
Where you'd spell out the same extend.
I don't know. I used to get like bonus or extra. I don't think extend was the normal word for these sort of things.
No, but I mean, you'd literally collect the letters extend.
Yeah, I know. But that's what I mean. Like, you would collect the letters of a word and it would do something.
There were games where you would collect specifically the letters in extend.
Yeah, but I don't remember extend as much as I do remember like the word extra or the word bonus in games like this. That's all I'm saying.
What was the other game? Was it Rainbow Islands?
Definitely Rainbow Islands had some kind of a bonus thing going on.
It was the extend system.
Really, was it?
I'm sure it is.
Okay.
Oh man. I can have
Cool.
to do a deep dive in the Taitoverse extend system.
Well, I mean, of course, since but was New Zealand was New Zealand's story title or Taito?
Yes, it was Taito. And I don't know if it was Taito and then released under Ocean or Ocean whatever, but
Oh, okay, yeah, they might be like the US distributor. Of,
yeah, because it came on the Taito Legends PlayStation 2 game, which had all of these, so Bubble Bobble, etc. Bubble Bobble also had the extend system, no?
I feel like
Listen to you sandbagging my extend system description.
I really am. I'm so sorry that I'm doing it.
So I just say it's a system because multiple games had exactly the same mechanic where you collected the letters of the same color and extend.
Okay. I'm gonna bow down to your better knowledge of this one.
And judging from my Google search and the one image I can find of the word extend on Bubble Bobble. That's case closed.
Okay. Go. Absolutely.
I waffled on a New Zealand story, loved it, but also it's one of our first games as well. So it's kind of rare, I think, that your first game holds up and wasn't just a mess. I have no idea whether that was like a because we didn't really have the concept of launches, right? With the Amigas.
No. Like the closest you got to launch was reading about it in Amiga Power or Commodore, whatever, and just sort of reading through it, and then they're saying blah 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 should be out for Christmas, and whether or not it came out for Christmas or not didn't really matter to you because it mattered as to whether or not your shop close by to you, which sold the game, got it in or not. So it's like whether it was a Woolworths or whatever.
Great.
Yeah.
Tell me about one of your games.
So the first game I want to talk about is a game called Gravity Force 2. And now I think I've banged on about this one before to you. Sounds a bit strange. To you before. It also comes under the alternative title Gravity Power, which I'll talk about in a second. But Gravity Force 2, it's hard to describe this, so I'm going to try my best to. Is basically a 2D sort of dogfighting sim, which kind of takes the element of turning left and right that you see in asteroids. So you have the little ship in asteroids that can turn left and right, but spins round on the screen. And then you can sort of move across the screen by thrusting, sort of thing, by pressing the fire button, and you sort of move in that direction. And it basically takes those controls, but adds it to a dogfighting thing, and adds gravity. So if you could imagine in asteroids, your ship was constantly falling down.
Yeah.
You had to keep thrusting up the way in order to keep yourself level. So it's kind of like that. And what Gravity Force 2 did was it just gave you a ton of levels to sort of do a little dogfight with your mate. It was a co-op game, not a co-op, a versus game. You were both looking at the same screen, you could still see the same thing going on, but you were basically flying your ship around, which was fucking hard to do. It was a hard thing to maneuver that ship because of the gravity and that thrust mechanic. But it had cool scenery and you could do certain things with the scenery. So there was a sort of like a soft earth that you could fire through, or you could plunge your ship through, but that would take some of your health off. But it would sort of save you in the middle of a dogfight sort of thing. You had special powers as well. So if you press back on the joystick, you could like fire off a homing missile, or you could put on a shield, which you chose before you actually went into the level itself. And along with that, as well as like having soft scenery, you had like hard scenery. So you would have like metal girders and things like that you just couldn't destroy in any fashion. So there was always an element of trying to navigate in the empty space in between all of these sort of scenery that you've been given. And yeah, it's like me and a friend of mine, we pretty much did the Conservatory King thing of playing that one over and over and over and over. And because there were so many hundreds of levels, it was really quite cool because we actually not spend the time dogfighting initially. It would be, let's check out all of the hidden messages or the cool little areas, because sometimes they would just sort of create these mazes that was almost impossible to navigate unless you were really, really slow and careful, or like some sort of, savant at these kind of that particular control system. And it was really, really cool just to like have so much at your disposal to sort of play about with and see, and yeah, it was just a good co-op fighting dogfighty game. Do you get what I mean when I was sort of talking about the controls?
Yeah, so it's I think Astrolander, the mini game, one of the mini games you unlock in Time Splitters 2.
Okay.
Remember those?
Nope.
There were certain levels where if you belted through, you would find a little game hidden. So there's Anaconda, Astrolander, I can't remember the other one.
Yes, and then, yes, I just googled Astroland, and yes, it's almost identical to that, except it has more colours. Yeah.
So that's and then I think so. Was the original Gravity Force single player, and you just had to get through levels, or was it always co-op?
I don't know. I have no idea. Never played the original Gravity Force, and it was just I think it was possibly the same thing again, but it had less levels and less what's it called? Special powers. Okay,
because in Astrolander, phenomenal soundtrack by the way on the official system. So could you do like 360s?
Yeah. Like
so you could be so if you were really with it, you could be upside down, thrusting, so you're traveling in a certain direction, but then kind of firing at your enemy as you're, strafing
exactly
past.
That.
Before then smashing into a wall because you couldn't right yourself properly.
Exactly that. Yeah.
I love. Do you know if Gravity Force was the original game that kind of invented this system? Because I feel like I've played a number of games.
I think it was. I think it was quite an early on sort of game, and it was. I think it's two Swedish guys that actually created it, and I mean, they very openly sort of say that it is based on sort of asteroids and that sort of thing. So I don't know if they had. I don't know if they had the what's the word I'm looking for. I don't know if they had the original idea, but I'm gonna say yes.
Did you know that in 2015 they remade it?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, yes. Way to fucking shit over my rest of the talking.
Jeez, come on! I don't even have a history with this game, and I know this information off the top of my head.
Yeah. No, but yeah. So what I touched on earlier was Gravity Power, which was basically it was the DLC in those days for Gravity Force 2. And it came free with Amiga power. And it was a much better version of Gravity Force 2 with even more levels and even more what's it called? Weapons and power-ups and things like that. So it was just it was a much better thing, and it was free. That was the cool thing, you know, just like, I mean, fair enough, he bought the magazine, but yeah, it was just so cool to get that upgrade to a game that I already loved, and then an even better version of it, which continued to be sort of played. But yeah, as you were saying and as you were putting on, they have redone it. It exists for pretty much all systems, including Android and Windows and all that sort of stuff. And I had a little go the other day there. Doesn't really stand the test of time.
Oh, that's bad to hear.
I mean, it's fine, but I think part of what was the fun in that game was essentially just, you know, I was sitting there with a mate, we were both getting good at it, we're doing exploration. I don't have the time, effort, energy or willpower to sort of go through that again, you know. And as great as it was, I think it lives in the past.
You can play it online, right?
I think so. I don't know. Yeah, probably.
Okay. Maybe we should get that going.
Yeah, and we could podcast it at the same time and do a video podcast. But yeah, that's one of the ones that I wanted to talk about. And the other thing I kind of wanted to... Sorry, go on.
Did you have it as a boxed product?
No. I think Gravity Force 2 I had as part of a demo disc on the front of Amiga Power or something like that, and then, you know, a year later Amiga Power brought out Gravity Power, you know, like that sort of thing. And a great deal of my Amiga discs were demo discs that were on the front of magazines for a long time. Yeah. But yeah, the other thing I sort of wanted to mention was, like, I briefly sort of discussed about how you could sort of break the scenery and move the scenery and then shoot it. And what you were moving, or what you were like ploughing through, was the equivalent of like pixels. And it's weird. It started to think or remind me of how many other games on the on the Amiga at that time, which were kind of two-player co-op, were all about sort of like destroying pixels almost. And just to take it back to something that's a bit more familiar, the original Worms. I don't know. Did you play the original Worms?
Yeah, we played a lot of the original Worms.
Yeah, and like you would fire bombs, and they would like destroy that scenery, you know, because there would be like this sort of implausible slice through the world where you would get grass on the land and you would somehow see the inside of the earth, which was somehow hovering above some more grass and the earth underneath it, you know. But then you would actually destroy that and you would see like craters being made, and you would see the little pixels falling down, which would create little mounds of dirt and things like that. I think that was quite a cool concept. I mean, I know it probably still exists in much better ways on 3D systems, but it reminded me, you know, of that ability that, like, to almost like, if you could fire, I think you could fire things like dirt bombs at people as well, and you could like bury the worms in the dirt, and then they'd have to get out of it, which would like damage their health and that sort of thing. And there was quite a few, especially demo games and things like that had this sort of pixels that would be representative of Earth and cover you up, or you'd have to dig through it. Similar to Lemmings as well. Lemmings is a very good example of that. The original Lemmings, where you would like carve your way through the dirt, or you would make one explode, but it would leave a crater and that sort of stuff. So you had that sort of impact on the world that you were sort of playing in. Yeah.
Which then we saw it kind of made it was like a subgenre in 3D games. So Red Faction always kind of made a big thing of its scenery destruction, even though to its credit it was a nice gimmick to be blowing huge chunky walls, but then inevitably you'd hit like this indestructible metal plate that was secretly behind every single wall and every single wall. And then was it Black? Although there was less scenery. Well, no, it was scenery. It wasn't kind of digging in the way you're talking about. It was virtually anything in the level can be destroyed. So those are the sort of successes. But
I suppose Minecraft is the modern day equivalent.
Really? Yeah.
Except the pixels are just massive.
Yeah. I do remember, when we play like a 4-player game of Worms, and you're down to the last 2 worms, and the level would just be completely, unrecognizable to what you started with, and half your turn would be trying to jump out of holes to get onto a vantage point. So you'd be standing on this tiny, impossible sliver of earth between 2 massive craters in the land to try and get your shot off.
Yep.
Yeah. Good times. Pixel destruction.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, I've gone off on one. So tell me, what's your second game that you wanted to talk about?
Well, segueing nicely from what you said.
Is it Worms?
It's not Worms. No, I didn't actually think of that. Weirdly, I guess it was quite late. I think it was Lemmings. So.
Okay, cool.
So the Amiga in our house was kind of everybody used it. It was really weird. So my mum and dad would get into different games. So for a while they were both obsessed with Hybris. Which is like it's not a bullet hell shooter. What do you call the shooters which vertical scrolling shooter? I don't know. You fly as a little plane and go up.
It technically is a bullet hell. It's just it wasn't as hellish as a bullet hell.
Yeah, well they weren't bullet hell for a long period of time, and then they became. Anyway, so Hybris was one of those, a very good one of those, which they kind of really got into, and then Lemmings was one that they also got really into, and that we all got into. We'd sit around as a family and kind of play through the levels. And I remember one particular level had my dad so stumped that he'd like go to work thinking about it, and he'd come back from work and have like maps and diagrams of theories to try in order to get through these particularly challenging levels where you've only got one digger, one pickaxe man, one builder, and yet somehow you have to get 90 lemmings across the thing. So yeah, another entry for phenomenal soundtrack. All the Lemmings songs, even though some of them were based on
I think all of them were based on classical music.
Classical music or nursery rhymes.
Or the can.
Yeah. I think there were a few original tracks in there as well. Those were great. Then you get those hellish levels where it would just be one long platform, and then you had however many of those vertical diggers, and you just had to catch as many guys as possible walking along and to not lose them. Then you had the kind of iconic self-destruct thing. So if you were just frustrated, you'd fuck it, you double click at it and you go, oh no, and they'll blow up. Love Lemmings. Still love Lemmings. A friend the other day was playing I was playing Lemmings and got stuck on a level and was sending screenshots, and everyone was kind of feeding into how you should beat.
Brilliant.
One of our earliest SNES games was Lemmings 2. Did you ever play Lemmings 2? It was Tribes.
Yeah, Lemmings 2 Tribes. I think it's one of these ones that I owned, but it didn't recapture Lemmings, the original one, so I wasn't interested. Yeah.
It sort of did, but they changed it. They made it bad. And so they had these different worlds with different themes, and it wasn't lost some of that original charm, I think, by trying to be a bit more characterful and appealing. So,
yeah. I mean, it's like the later Worm games as well. Like, what's the point? Why are we doing this? You'd lose a lot of charm. Yeah. Well,
when they became, these bobble-headed cartoon characters, it was much better when they were a stack of 5 pixels, and you just had their voice and their randomly generated name to kind of give them a bit of character, and often that worked fine.
Yeah. And speaking of the voice, it's one thing I always found hilarious is I remember, because being the top-notch Billy Big Balls hacker that I am,
hacking away.
You could get the sound files from Worms on the Amiga, and they used to have the ability on the workbench to sort of play around with sound files and slow them down. And basically, because it was like created by, I think it was like a teenager in his room, and Team 17 like sort of bought it from him, sort of thing. You slowed down all of the words or the sounds in Worms, and you actually just heard some guy sort of like speaking, going kamikaze, but because it'd been sped up, you get so used to that was the effect they used, speeding it up for all of the Worm sound effects. Like, I'll get you. It was actually just somebody going, I'll get you, and then it's getting sped up. It was quite cool. Top-notch hacker, Billy Big Balls.
Top-notch hacking away at the core, the source code of Worms to find out. If you've not played Lemmings, and I imagine there are a lot of people who haven't, I'm sure there are various versions of it you could try out. Give it a go.
Well, hang on. I cannot condone the use of or playing Lemmings, the mobile game.
Oh God, okay. You and your fucking... Is there a mobile game out there that you will not have a go at?
I think there was a bit of hype about this one.
Torture yourself.
Yeah, I do. I need to find out if they're any good yet or not.
Okay, so we probably had a conversation about it, but I've forgotten. I was unaware there was a Lemmings mobile game.
Yeah, well, it's rubbish. Just don't play the original one. Play the original one on the Amiga, which was actually ported to the Commodore 64 as well. So I had the Commodore 64 version. And yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. Little pixels. Do the puzzles. It's hard. It's fun. It's challenging. It's great.
Yeah. Save the Lemmings, and it taps into that same place that Pikmin does as well, which is unavoidable cute minion death.
Yeah.
Your heart breaks every time you lose a lemming, or there are some levels where not every lemming can make it. So
yeah, cool. That's Lemmings then.
That's Lemmings. What's your second game?
It's Rodland.
Hey.
Rodland was one of my favourites of the sort of one-screen single-player or two-player sort of Bubble Rainbow Island style games. And Rodland, basically, you were two highly Japanese characters with big hair, and you had a rod, so it's already living up to its title. And
were you in a land?
There was land as well. And basically, through each level, there is a number of enemies just walking back and forth, similar to your Bubble Bobbles or whatever. And you would grab them with your rod, and you would slam them back and forth. So you'd sort of like grab them with the rod, and then do 180, slam them over to the other side, and then slam them over to the side, kind of like the Hulk move on Loki in the Avengers. And then eventually, I think after 3 throwings of them back and forward, they would explode, and then you would get like fruit, or you would get bonus letters for the bonus system, which would give you a bonus level, I believe. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Was it extent?
No. I think it was bonus. I'm pretty sure it was bonus or extra. But
it's not the extent.
What it allowed
it's
you
not
to
the extent
do,
system.
Yeah, like the extent system. Yeah. If you collected them all of the enemies would then turn into plants, which you would then collect, and that would kill them. But you would also get like extra bonus points. So your idea was just to run around the level, not hit them as much as possible, collect all of the other things so that you could do that bonus level to get extra points. And yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was great. It had really messed up characters as well. Super Japanese madness. There was like one of the characters was it was called the Polymorph, which was quite cool because there was also like the Red Dwarf episode just called Retro, the Polymorph as well. But there was a little sea cucumber-esque thing. It was pink, and it would basically turn itself inside out and sort of fire a great big long tongue at you, and it would just crawl around. But just, because it is what it is, it also had a pink bowl. So it had this weird, disgusting pink sea cucumber thing, and it had a pink bowl. Just because it was hyper cutesy and stuff like that. And yeah, you would go through the levels, you would try and complete them with the highest score possible, that sort of thing. You would then have boss fights, and I remember, I think it was, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe it was like a shark would occasionally just pop its head in from the side of the screen, and you had ledges to sort of stand on, and instead of like capturing them with your rod, you just sort of had to like taser them a number of times whilst avoiding whatever, I don't know, probably mini sharks he was firing at you. And I think most of the boss characters were like that. You just had to sort of jump around and make sure you weren't hit and just sort of taser them with your rod.
There was the one with 6 crocodiles. Do you remember that one?
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Not sharks, It was crocodiles, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you could only fire them. Oh, yeah. You could only attack them when the mouth was open. But when the mouth was open, little birds were flying out of them. Because you get
crocodiles.
Was it little crocodiles?
Yeah, I remember it being little crocodiles.
I thought it was birds, like the cleaning teeth birds you get on hippos. Yeah. But yeah, that was good. And of course, the on the blog www.thatguy.co.uk, I have a little ode to the Rodland Fairy. So
basically, everything you've said so far is just dressing. It's a facade. The only reason that Rodland is on your list is because of the Rodland Fairy that you got, which I think you got when you spelled extend, right? Extra.
Extra. I can't remember what was the rules for how you got the Rodland Fairy. But yeah, basically it was like an anime character, and she would just be there and give you like an extra life or whatever in between the levels. And I think...
And just describe this fairy, Richie.
She... has wings. But I also think she ends up being your mother. Like when you complete the game, it's really So I think she's looking after you, and I think it might be like a rite of passage. Is the entire story of the Rodland, and I think something horrible happens to your mother at the end, or something like that, or she is dead and she's actually an angel or something. I mean, the true connoisseurs will, I'm sure, be on Twitter absolutely, berating us. But yeah, it's something along those lines. But yeah, I don't have anything more to really say about Rodland. Any questions about Rodland from you, Farley?
There was a Game Boy version.
That's not a question.
Was there a Game Boy version?
Yeah.
Yeah, we also played Rodlands, and it was one of those ones that ended up being one of the fixed slot co-op games because it was just so good. And like you were saying at the beginning, the structure of each level. So once you finish a level, you have to scroll up. There'd always be a different challenge to it. So I remember one of the levels. There's just a whole bunch of bad guys who just are floating in midair, and so they just drop, and all you've got to do is just go bam, 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 them as quickly as possible. so it had that. It did have that bubble kind of challenge to it, in that the enemies and the level. There was kind of a strategy or best strategy to try and do it, and then as we mentioned earlier, you wanted to do it quickly before they turned into super fast evil versions, which made it 10 times harder. Good game.
Yeah. Do you remember the polymorphs, the weird sea cucumber things?
They look like little tremors with the bow.
Yeah.
They're like a ring of teeth.
Yeah, creepy design, and I just love the fact that there's this disgusting little tremor with the teeth, mini Sarlacc pit, but with a bow.
with a little
crazy
bow.
Japanese, man.
Yeah,
cool. So, what's your third and final game?
So my last shout out game. It was difficult to pick. So it's from the Dizzy series. So I really liked the Dizzy games. I think we played. So we had Desert Island Dizzy, Magic Land Dizzy, and Fantasy
Treasure Island Dizzy, not Desert Island Dizzy.
No, Treasure Island. I always get confused because it's Treasure Island, Fantasy World, Magic Land. All of them are very. There was also Dizzy Panic, which was a.
There was millions of Dizzy games. There was was Fast Food Dizzy. There was Dizzy Down the Rapids. There was there was a lot of cash in that weren't official Dizzy games. They were They were the equivalent of non-canonical side games. But yeah, sorry, go on.
from the Dizzy video game universe. So Treasure Island was the first one that we played, and again I think it's just one of these burned discs, and then I think we actually bought a couple of the other ones, and they used to come with little trading cards. I still got 2 of the trading cards that they came with. God knows if anyone got a full set, because they were quite expensive to buy these games, and I think there were random cards per game. But the one I spent most time on, I think, was Fantasy World Dizzy. So those of you who don't know, it was a really challenging puzzle platformer. So Dizzy was an egg, and it was super fragile. So if you touched an enemy, fell on spikes, fell too far, you'd die. And then you'd go around collecting different items to give to different people to collect whatever the collectible is in that particular game. Again, the soundtrack to these is phenomenal. I spent a huge
absolutely.
I spent a huge amount of time trying to find specific soundtracks for Fantasy World Dizzy and Treasure Island Dizzy, because the soundtrack to many of the Dizzy games were excellent, and I spent a lot of time trying to find those soundtracks online because, of course, back in the day, unless you were a elite hacker like yourself,
yeah,
you didn't have YouTube. And the only way you could experience these soundtracks was by putting in the game and playing them, or trying to record the music with a tape, which was never that good. Sound quality was awful.
No, not at all.
But because these games were released on so many of their different Amigas and Commodores, and I think some of them were even like specky games.
Yeah, no, I mean the original ones were on Spectrum and ported.
It's really
to,
hard to find the specific, format, because they redid the soundtracks for all of them because of the different sound cards or whatever. So I've got a whole raft of YouTube videos, including the rolling. What do you call it? When you sit on the title screen and it will go through something.
Oh, yeah, it goes. Yeah, rolling credits. I don't know.
There's a name. Yeah, there's a name for those. And so on Fantasy World Dizzy, there was this tiny little rift in the soundtrack, which was just, I don't know, made my spine tingle. So I spent hours just sat on the title screen waiting for this little bit of music to come up every 5 minutes or whatever. So yeah, I really enjoyed those. I still remembered some of this. So Treasure Island Dizzy, Eggs on Legs gave you invincibility, I think, and I Can Fly was another cheat, which.
Oh wow! Putting in the cheat code. Yeah.
So you could actually explore the level that you couldn't get past because it was quite solid.
Yeah.
So there we go. Shout out for all the Dizzy games, but Fantasy World Dizzy I think was the one that I actually got all the way through and liked the most.
Yeah, I think Fantasy World Dizzy. I mean, I played them on the Commodore 64 again. There seems to be a theme to this fucking podcast. But yeah, also shout out to Doppelganger and his worst moments in video games. And he was playing Treasure Island Dizzy. He'd got all 30 coins, and this was on the Spectrum, and he was about to hand them in when his cousin thought it'd be funny, what does the letter Q do? And in those days, it just quit the game. This is really, really, really horrible. So he just lost all of that progress. He probably spent a long time collecting all of those coins, staying alive, and then some prick just comes in and presses Q. Game over. Take you to the rolling screen at the start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The awesome soundtrack kicks in. I don't know where Dizzy sits. I'm surprised Codemaster still exists, right? Barely.
Well, I kind of know the story behind it. It's not very interesting. Codemaster still exists, but it was the Oliver twins that did Dizzy, and basically they did like the first few Dizzies, and then everything else was sort of outsourced. And I don't think anybody cared about them anymore. I mean, by the time I was playing the Amiga, I remember there was one that came out, Prince of the Yoke Folk. And by that time, I was just thinking, I don't care, because it looked like they went all Sonic on it, and we were sort of turning all of his Dizzy egg friends into, cash-inable characters and stuff like that. So yeah, I didn't play it. So I don't know. I mean, I have fond memories of Treasure Island and Fantasy World and Magic Land Dizzy, but they were fucking tough as nails, and they were again the usual classic example of what we started this whole podcast off with is the up and diagonal jumping, the number of times you would take that stupid fucking egg with these sort of repeated boxing glove standing animation where he's just looking at you and waggling the boxing gloves. And then you would try to do a jump, but instead he would just jump directly up into the air, do a somersault, and then land again. When in fact, what you wanted to do was do the diagonal jump. You know what I mean, don't you?
Yeah. That was what I was thinking of when we talked earlier, where you just he'd run off a cliff into some spikes or into some water rather than.
And it really was harsh, like because everything was on like one screen, and then you would move from one screen to the next. You'd move to the next screen, and then you would just die because a thing arrived, and like because you didn't know, you're dead. You know, it's not. You know, it's like right, okay.
Or you'd be on the top right of the screen. You'd jump, which would take you up into the a screen that was above, and then you'd kind of make a trajectory through that, and then go down, so you'd be into the next screen. So sometimes you would just blindly, jumping,
falling. In fact, there was. I think it was in something in Magic Land where you have to jump off a mountain, and you fall down through like 4 or 5 screens before you land somewhere. And if you land wrong, it'll be like onto a flame. And they're like, oh no, you're a fried egg, you lose a life. I'm like, oh, fuck off. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we live in a world where Dizzy needs to make a comeback. Do you?
A collection would be great, I think.
Yeah.
Straight.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Straight remakes. Update the controls and the graphics, redo the sound. Yeah, all easy jobs that you can just do in half an afternoon, and then release them as a nice bundle. That'd be fine. But yeah, I don't think we need a 3D Dizzy or I don't know. There's an interesting, because we did all our research beforehand and absolutely not doing it live. There's a little section on the Dizzy Wikipedia page about remakes and revival attempts, where they said they're willing, but they'd have to do it right, and that was back in 2005.
Okay.
2010, the Oliver twins rediscovered the code for several lost NES games that they did in the 90s that were never published, and they subsequently released them.
Oh, okay.
Mystery World Dizzy, a remake of Final Fantasy World Dizzy, was released on the 8th of April 2000.
Final Fantasy World Dizzy.
Final Fantasy World Dizzy.
That's
that's why I asked about Codemasters. I don't know if there's Dizzy ever popped up in the background of a Colin McRae game or something.
Sort of like when you do an uppercut, Dizzy appears in the corner.
Dizzy comes. So there we go. Dizzy games coming out, and NES Dizzy games coming out in 2017. Who knew?
Wow. Okay. Fine. That's a thing.
What's your last?
My last one is The Settlers.
Oh.
You know that one?
Yes, I do.
So it's a medieval setting, and I think it was like the beginning of those sort of god game / sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Command and Conquer-ish type games.
Real-time strategy?
Yeah, real-time strategy. There was a level of that. Yeah, absolutely. So the whole concept behind that is you're sort of you've got a land, you build a castle, you build stone collectors, you get people who cut down trees, you get people who get water, people who make food, and then ultimately what you want to do is try and create an army of well-fed but well-constructed houses before you invade the other computer AI version that is doing exactly the same thing as you, but hopefully shitter. And it was great at the time. When I was a kid, I probably spent hours and hours and hours, which, you know, felt like an eternity when you were a kid as well. You know, just sort of building up and amassing these forces, and, you know, you would learn new things as well. I think it was one of these ones that I had that was hooky as well. And, like, as you're playing through the game, you find out, oh, right, I need to do a geological survey of the rocks before I can find out what's the point in building a mill. Sorry, not a mill, a mine here if you don't know what you're going to actually be mining. And it took me quite a few games before I realised, alright, this mine is not producing anything, why not? Because you need to do a fucking survey before it, you know, and that sort of stuff. I spent a lot of time on that one, and I had a lot of time for it. I remember it quite fondly. And yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about real-time strategy games as well, and I think it was probably quite flawed, and it is flawed by today's standards. You can actually find it for the PC. It's abandonware nowadays as well, so it's nobody's like looking at it, and there are sequels to it and all that sort of stuff, but just thinking about how much fun I had with them and how much I don't want to play a current one.
Yeah, we talked. I was thinking exactly that. We talked about Command and Conquer, talked about Settlers, and as you were saying that, I was like, I don't have a desire in me to play an RTS.
No, I have StarCraft 2, and I've only got so far in it, and every time I think about StarCraft 2, I think, yeah, that was a good game, creating all of that sort of stuff and doing this. And then I also remember how fucking stressful it is as well. Like, StarCraft is a really stressy game. You think you're just going to be like building a few buildings and it's all fun, blah blah blah. But you're not. You're doing things as quick as you can. You know, like fucking mine the crystals faster. I need to upgrade this thing, and do I make the decision to make a barracks, or should I put up a sentry post just in case the enemy comes? And then, oh no, the enemies come, I've got to make all my buildings fly away. And you end up so stressed, and you think, that is not what this game is, you know, like. But obviously, you know, it has its place in the world, but I think I'm very aware that these RTSs can be a stressy minefield. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and with that top level play, it's all measured in basically the first however many minutes of the game. There is a efficiency curve, and the quicker you are at like click, 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 the better you can starting to get going. I think that's the one extreme of kind of RTSs, and then you also have things like Civ, which I've got a couple of friends who are really into Civ, and week-long games and the classic just another turn thing. So bleary-eyed up at 3 o'clock in the morning and just have another turn, which is a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah. But like, I've seen some of the pictures from Civ and other games like that, and it's just like, I don't understand what the hell all of these things on the screen mean, and it looks really, really in depth, and it's just like, I don't have the time to like learn an interface, because that's what it feels and looks like, it's just an interface for all of these different means of incomes and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, oh god. But then the other flip side of that is I actually did install the Settlers and had a little go at it, and then it was like, oh man, this interface is awful. You couldn't move about, everything was unintuitive, and like, I can understand why we have much newer and prettier and better interfaces and things like that. But there's other games that just wouldn't go back to on those sort of RTSs. Did you play Black and White?
No, I watched Randy McSparran play a lot of Black and White.
Okay, yeah. I don't think I could ever go back to Black and White again. Not interested in that at all.
I think I went more into the Advanced Wars Fire Emblem side of things.
Yeah, I mean, those as
turn-based.
RTSs are turn-based RTSs, are they not?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that changes things, yeah.
A whole level of, okay, I can see what, of course, most of them, so it's the same with Fire Emblem Three Houses has it. You also have a rewind system, right? And Impact used the rewind system quite a number of times. So it's a little bit more forgiving if you do make a cock up or you've just made a slight miscalculation and somebody's exposed and it's 50-50 as to whether they'll die or not, and they do, and you're fuck, okay, that's a permanent death. So yeah, turn-based fine, but the real-time ones, I'm absolutely with you. I do find those I do find those stressful, because it's just that constant feeling of I'm not doing this efficiently enough. Right?
And on top of that, at any second now I could get attacked by the computer. And sometimes, like, in these games, you spend so long, like, creating this massive bunker, and you're just like, oh god, thank god I've never not been attacked in 3 hours or whatever. And then when you finally go in for the attack, you see that there's just like one guy, somebody chopping down trees, and the base has been destroyed by a scout party that you didn't even realise you'd done, and you're just like, oh, okay.
There was something, I don't know if I talked about it when we mentioned Command and Conquer 2, but the AI they had on the PlayStation was just broken. So they did it. So somehow, possibly, through computer cheating, very early on, they'd managed to mass produce quite big armies. So you're still setting shit up, and you're still just getting your troops together and advancing your tech to get the tanks and stuff, and they just, waves of enemies would come. But then if you manage to sit through weather those initial raids, the AI just kind of gave up. So yeah, as you'd say, once you'd amassed ridiculous size army, and you had like a standing army to protect your base, and you'd march into their base, and it was kind of like the Mary Celeste. They'd gone a bit weird. They just built 400 silos, and there was one ore truck out, and like a dog, a man, and then a tank. One tank in the top right-hand corner of the map. They just spent ages hunting for. Okay. I was more threatened by the imagined threat of the enemy than their
exactly. That's the thing. It's like you're like, oh, fuck. Do I have the right, amount of people? Okay, they haven't attacked me yet. Maybe I'll do all of the upgrades, get up to the top level, and then you go in for the attack, and you just wipe the floor with them, and you're like, oh, right. Maybe there's a better way to play this game. Okay. I don't think there's much more to say about the Settlers. I enjoyed it. It had like 1 million levels in it. But it was pointless. Just play the first one, and you get all of the things that you could ever need in it. Yeah. So I think that's our 3. Or 6 in total. Any honourable mentions from your side, Charles?
Yeah, let's do a roll call, and it's mostly just games that I remember. So IK Plus, which we talked about before. Nitro Boost, Chase HQ. Did you ever play that?
Chase HQ, I played that on the Mega Drive. Yeah,
that was good. Hybris, I mentioned. James Pond,
Robocod, yeah.
Alien Breed. There's a really good isometric Pac-Man.
Oh, okay. I mean, Alien Breed, that came out again. What was it? About 5-10 years ago. They brought all of them out again on the 360. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Double Dragon, Golden Axe.
Again, those are all Mega Drives.
For you. Lately. North and South, which is a Civil War.
That rings a bell, yeah.
Real-time strategy game, but when you entered a battle, you then
It becomes a turn-based thing.
Yeah, well, no, it becomes a real-time action thing where you've got your cavalry, cannons, and your men, and then sometimes there'll be like a bridge that separates them, and you kind of take it in turns to kind of go through. So, okay, I'm gonna, march this battalion of guys. That was really good. Forgotten Worlds, extremely difficult.
Remind me what Forgotten Worlds was?
Forgotten Worlds was kind of like, I want to say Contra, but you were sci-fi spacemen and you could fly. So you could walk on the ground. You could also fly and shoot in 360 degrees. Really tricky. Again,
yeah.
It came out on the Mega Drive as well. Fun School. We played all the Fun Schools and they were fun. And we were based in a school with these little games. And then lastly on my list was Cannon Fodder.
Yeah, I mean, it almost made it to my list of the games, but it just seemed too it was too much of a low-hanging fruit to sort of talk about it. But yeah, Cannon Fodder was a great game. I remember being super impressed that it had a theme tune. I thought that was really, really cool. Just just like having the computer singing at you. And it was a fun little game. I don't think it stands the test of time. Do you?
Yeah, I don't know. My memories of it, I think, are better than what it actually looks like. But I did like, your home screen, which would show you all the gravestones from men who die. Another one that kind of tries to tug on your heartstrings when when your characters get knocked out. Cannon Fodder. Oh, and Space Hulk. I used to play a ton of Space Hulk, which was an adaptation of the board game, the Games Workshop board game.
Okay.
And that has been updated and re-released. So I've got that on the. I played that on the PlayStation 4. That was really hard, but that was really scary as well. In a primitive graphics kind of way. How about you? Any other honourable mentions?
Well, we did actually mention a few of them. Rainbow Island, Another World. Cannon Fodder was also on my honourable mentions as well. A couple of other games that just I wanted to touch on as well. There was one which I played called Perihelion. I don't know if that rings a bell with you at all.
No.
It was part of a subgenre of Amiga games, which were basically hyper D&D style games.
Oh,
where
you
used to get lots of them. Like I think Might and Magic, in fact, sort of came from the Amiga as well. Where you would just go really, really in depth into character creation. And when I say character creation, it wasn't very good. It was like you set all of your stats, and then you had secondary stats that you would set numbers for, and you could even like custom what your character face looked like. And I remember really getting excited about Perihelion because of an Amiga magazine review. And I'm like, wow, you can spend forever on this. It's so detailed. They spent so much time on this, blah blah blah. And you could spend a lot of time on this game where you were just like, setting all of your D&D stats to a ridiculous level. You would start the game. Everything was orange or silver. If you Google an image of Perihelion on the Amiga, everything is either orange or silver. And so I was like, that's their brand, and I just remember it very vividly because it's kind of like Alien 3 where everything is fucking orange, But with Perihelion, you would do that, and then you would get into the main screen, and there was quite a few games like this, or at least ones that I have a memory of. I think Dune as well did it as well, where you would be given a set standard pixel arty background, which was very, very pretty and all that sort of thing. But this pixel arty background, you would basically sort of move left or right, and it would sort of change to be like the side of the street. It wasn't like a 3D sort of thing, but you would sort of move around from location to location, and it would have this set standard backdrop pixel art background. And Perihelion was that. Eventually, you would get to the game, which was a terrible. What is it called? Probably turn-based RTS. But yeah, that is all that game was. It was very, very in-depth. It was very pretty, but I couldn't get into it. But like I was saying, there was just quite a few games like that. There was fantasy ones. There was this one which was like high sci-fi fantasy. Yeah, things like Dune and stuff like that were also quite like that. But yeah, I'm sure you played some of those ones as well, but probably didn't spend forever on them. Other ones that we wanted to mention: Beneath a Steel Sky, of course, which just had its re-release or its sequel made. There was a platformer called Super Putty, which again has also been re-released as well. It was a very obscure one, which you're just a sort of ball and you move around and you can sort of, because you're stretchy, you can do certain things. And I think it might have actually been one of these ones that was sponsored, like Zoe with Chupa Chups, by Silly Putty, which was a thing when we were, kids. Yeah. Another World, which we talked about, and sort of lastly, one that I wanted to mention, which was quite early on in the Amiga, what's it called? The Amiga generation, as it were, was McDonald's Land. Did you ever hear of or play it? Yeah, it's it was a special kind of platform, and it was special in that you could like run to the ends of platforms and you would turn the world upside down, but all the gravity would change, so you could actually end up sort of falling off rather than falling down off the screen. You fall up off the screen and die. And yeah, it was quite an interesting one, and I actually had quite fond memories of it, despite it being clearly McDonald's cash-in. Fond memories of like exploring it and finding hidden blocks and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, as honourable mentions go, that's all I really wanted to mention for the Amiga.
One more's just come to mind: Brutal Football.
Brutal Football.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I was one of these people that actually quite liked Sensible World of Soccer as well.
Sensible Soccer.
So what was Brutal Football?
Brutal Football was imagine American football, but you play like everyone's a very generic Viking, but you could stomp each other and take each other out in order to score touchdowns. So that'd be another one that we'd.
Okay, is it like sort of Blood Bowl sort of thing?
Yeah, it is. I don't know. It looks like Blood Bowl. I think there's. I don't know if it's a copy of another game which is similar. Oh God! There's a book. There's a book coming out which covers a lot of these early Amiga developers, and there's a really good interview about the other game that was like this, that was very popular, and people are probably screaming at us. The game's on the tip of my tongue, I can't remember. But anyway, whichever one came first, whichever one was better, Brutal Football was the one that we ended up playing with.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think let's wrap it up on Amiga and our
Amiga.
trip down nostalgia. Yeah. Until next time. Say goodbye, Farley.
Tschüss.
Tschüss. Bye bye.